On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, which Thunder player has the most and least to prove this season?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're joined by Joel Lorenzi at JXLorenzi on Twitter, beat writer for the Oklahoman, to talk Thunder basketball. Which Thunder player has the most to prove, has already proven everything, and what can we judge from this season? But Joel, we're inching ever so closely to the NBA season. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. It's just another, boring off-season day. We could be closer, that's for sure.
But, we've never been closer than we are right now, Joel. With each passing minute, we've never been closer than we are right now. We got to stack days. We got to have a 0-0 mindset of how to get better each and every day, even whenever the work and the process isn't as fun as we want it to. Got to have the broccoli first, Joel.
Right. So I've heard we're not married to the concept of time.
That's right. We are married to the process, and we've got to eat our broccoli. The candy stories will come, and that's only a few weeks away at Media Day. But for now, this is what you got. Joel, I would ask you what you're writing recently, but it's been a wasteland over there for you. Luckily, your teammates are carrying the load. Let's talk about this Thunder team. Whenever we talk about who has the most to prove, it can really be taken in a vast majority of areas. I mean, you can talk about them personally. You can talk about proving it within the construct of the team. And so we're just going to rank the players. We're not going to include two ways. And we only are going to have 13 guys because the Thunder have an open roster spot and they have Topic, who's hurt right now. So it's basically two open roster spots. And Topic obviously can't prove anything during his redshirt season. So 1 through 13, which Thunder players have the most to prove? Joel, who's your number one?
Okay. You already mentioned it. We can go any variety of directions here. We can go personal agenda, personal game. We can go team structure, team frame. I think my ordering kind of varied. For that reason, I went personal first. And I have Ousmane Dieng is number one. Just because, we've all talked about it, just how this season is kind of the season where you want to see something tangible. If this show really is, on the road, this is possibly a championship contender. You're talking about deep playoff runs. You're talking about, this operation it's moving faster than the speed of light. You want him to get on the train, right? It's year 3. He's done his stuff in the G League, but what tangible results can we see in a league that says, okay, well, he should be part of this thing that's moving toward, maybe the youngest finals team in league history? Like what proof is there that shows that he belongs? That's what he's facing this year. And so the stakes are high, man. The stakes are high. I don't know how many. It's not often you get a year 3 guy that's kind of put in this predicament. But that's the situation he's facing. So I got him as number one.
Yeah, you and I are in total agreement here at the top spot. I think it's Oos for a variety of reasons. Most notably, as you mentioned, it's kind of the end of the line one way or the other. I know that that's not going to be the sentiment from the organization, who really believes in Oos, who believes that he's checked all the boxes thus far, despite that disconnect with the fan base. But it's true. He's gotten a lot better in the G League. He's taken steps forward. They always knew this was going to be a project situation, but they also did not know at the time that this was going to be a team that had championship aspirations and would be in this unique position where they're already at that point of going to try to win championships while still having incoming lottery picks every single year. And that's not going to change this year. This year, the Thunder will be at the very top of the NBA Western Conference. They'll have a great regular season record to get them a really high, or I should say low draft pick of their own, but they'll still have a lottery pick incoming from elsewhere. So they're in that unique position. Roster spots are soon to be a premium. And I think with Oos, it's the challenge with him for why I put him number one. He does it at the G League level. Like, he truly made massive strides last year in the G League. He has not been able to translate that to the NBA stage. If I had to guess, I would imagine that we're going to see Oos play a lot at the beginning of the year, and it'll be a sink or swim type of deal where like he's either going to perform and either like show that he's progressed, or he won't, and he'll be back in the G League, and then you're just kind of biding time at that point, similar to how you saw them treat Pokashevsky, among others. So that's why I have Oos number 1. I think that this is a huge season for him, and it can go any direction.
Yeah, and with Oos, I think he's unique to some other, hit or miss prospects that are, facing that kind of year 3, year 4, limbo, and that, like with Poku, like if he hit cool, I mean, I don't know what his ceiling would have been, but if he hit cool, like that's a hit during, when he was drafted, it was a completely different direction. You're kind of just swinging for the fences there. But with Oos, it's like you could see the role that he could fill theoretically now, and it's a need, like theoretically, like they could have a more, I mean, as far as traditional modern fours go, like he does a lot of things you want your fours to do, like productive fours at least. Has the size, has the theoretical skill set, so it's like he could fill a need, not even a role, like not even a productive role, a need. So it's kind of the two sides of the pendulum, whichever way he can swing are fill a need or not look quite the part NBA ready yet. So it's just the bandwidth there. It's just broad range of results, and on one end, it's not like, oh well, if he hits, he's a cool, like it's not. I think it's different than Poku. It's that he could fill a need potentially. That's why I think people are really crossing their fingers with him.
Yeah, I think that Oos ideally is going to work out in OKC, and I think that it's not as bad as people believe it is because people just aren't investing in the G League to watch him improve. But there's no sugarcoating how important the season will be. So that's why he's number 1. And on a team that doesn't have that many questions. So like he does take the number 1 spot, but his competition for it is not as high as it would be in other places where you have way more variables, way more question marks. Whereas this team feels pretty concrete of they are a top seed in the West. They are a team that's going to be projected by many to go to the NBA Finals, if not win the NBA Finals. So that's kind of where Oos is a unique number 1 option. My number 2 option, Joel, as we agree on number 1, is J-Dub. And J-Dub has a lot to prove this year, specifically in the postseason, where last year you look at it, he was excellent against the Pelicans, but so was almost everyone in round 2 a sweep. And then in round 2 against Dallas, he was awesome on defense. And like that can kind of get lost in his offensive game, was that how good he was defensively. But the bottom line is you need a second score. And I think that the natural fit for that is J-Dub, just because of how he plays with the basketball in his hands. The position he plays lends itself to being able to score and create his own shot more than maybe a Chet Holmgren, but we'll see how he progresses as well. But the bottom line is one of these two guys, J-Dub or Chet, has to become a second option next to Shea, because they have everything else intact. They have the first option, they have the coach, they have the rotation. You've got to figure out 2 and 3, and how quickly they can get up to speed will define how successful this team can be at their end goal. So even though he has had a great career to this point, and he'll have another great regular season, he has the most to prove that he can gain from, especially in this season.
Yeah. No, he's my number 2 too, and I think now we're probably going to agree on number 2 and 3, because now it seems like there is some personal gain here, but this is more team structure. This is depending on what are their aspirations, how far can they really go. It depends on him. But no, you're right, especially on the positional thing, because I think why, and part of why Sam Presti in the front office never really, it doesn't seem, maybe there were conversations behind closed doors, but it never really seemed like they reached for kind of that modern 4, the traditional 4. I imagine holding out hope on Oos is like a fraction of that, but also there's still possibility there with Dub, that they want to see what Dub can be as this kind of modern 4, because he does create, as in terms of some positional stuff, theoretically he's a huge mismatch problem. I mean, if you're taking 4s off the dribble at his size or his strength, or any, he's just a mismatch problem generally, just with the creativity off the dribble, the shot making, in theory, like at his best. That's when we seen him at his best, he can close games. Like that is, I think, in theory, what people envision as, a team's second scorer. I mean, when your first option is as good as Shea, I mean, you can kind of hold off on answers. You can kind of wait to see what Dub is. It's not like I don't know, like if a team's first option, I'm not even gonna crap on somebody's first option, but you get what I'm trying to say. You can kind of wait on the answers. With Dub, it is interesting though because they can kind of wait on answers on what they want to do at the 4 because of the flashes he's shown them. But it all has to come together as well as the playmaking. I mean, so much of their offseason, you look at what they did, they obviously got better. They filled needs. They got 2 of the league's probably best role players. But at the same time, there's clearly a dependence on Dub's leap as a playmaker, on probably Case and Wallace's leap as a playmaker, on some of what Chet can be as a facilitator, how they want to use him there. Like there are some leaps from guys as playmakers, Sam talked about this at the end of the season, winning with the pass instead of with the dribble. Dub was all about, winning with the dribble during the regular season. That's who he is. But what kind of leap can he make as a playmaker? Like that is going to decide his team's ceiling. And I don't think that this dependence on playmaking that was kind of set up by their summer and the team structure now, I don't think it falls on anybody's shoulders maybe more than Dub.
Yeah, it's going to be a leap from both him and Shea in the playmaking category to really get them where they want to go. And so with J-Dub, you're going to feel the pressure of needing to take that leap and also needing to take a leap as a go-to scorer in the biggest moments on the biggest stage and then alleviate some of that pressure from SGA, who was excellent in the playoffs. So we'll talk more about who has the most to gain on this roster, including where does Shea rank, where does Chet rank, where does a guy like Dylan Jones rank, all coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Joel, you have one of the best cars on the beat. It is such a sweet ride, especially when it's parked legally. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning a championship. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has you covered, Joel, to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performances from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, all three fits Joel's car. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, it's your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for at eBay Motors, guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts that you want at the prices you want as well. It'll be easy to keep your car running and the MVP to bring home a huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay, guaranteed fit, only available for U.S. customers. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Joel Lorenzi, Oklahoman beat writer. Joel, we agree on J-Dub. I imagine that for 3, it's both of us with Chet, who I think that to your point before the break of what the Thunder are going to do at the 4 spot, it could be Chet Holmgren. Now, I think that we all view him as a center, and the Thunder view him as a center. But it's not as though the Thunder are going to be rigid and are going to not allow themselves to try out all these different possibilities. So if push comes to shove and your best option is Hartenstein in the middle and Chet playing the 4 the way that Jaren Jackson Jr. does in Memphis, then they have that option. I think in an ideal world, that's going to be J-Dub and Chet in the front court. But he still brings that wrinkle, and that's why I have him at 3s, because there's so much left to go for Chet. He had a jaw-dropping rookie season. It was a great year for him. There's no doubt about that. You couldn't ask for more in his rookie season, but the ceiling is still sky high, and that's what is so what was so exciting on draft night in 2022 was that he is this unicorn player who still, even as last year was a all-around raving success, did not capitalize on everything. For example, he's got to shoot over smaller guards more consistently. He's got to be more aggressive going to the rim and creating his own shot and looking to score versus looking to pass. And then you're going to see him take a step forward in just overall awareness and overall feel for the game, which was already high for a first-year player, but is naturally going to get better playing a difficult position for any rookie to master, and him and Lively did it as best you can as a first-year player, but they're going to get better in that as well. So it's sort of the same thing as J-Dub of either one of those two guys needs to take a step forward for this team to get to the end goal of winning a championship, which they're favored to do out west.
Yeah, no, obviously I agree with Chet at 3 for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned. I think with Chet, like, this idea, because I'm not sure, like obviously OKC is good enough, talented enough to be West favorites. But obviously what separates them from like a Boston is just the years of continuity and established stars. What we have here is raw potential, clearly proven young stars, but like the full blown stardom that needs to be seen has not been seen. And I think the difference between the 2 and 3 spot here, obviously, I think some of the things that the Thunder maybe needs to win, and especially like namely that Dallas series, um, I think Dub has more ground to cover than Chet does. I think in a perfect world, the Thunder, if they are the 2025 or 2026 NBA champions, it's probably with Chet Holmgren as their second best player, not their second scoring option, but their second best player. Just their full blown defensive anchor. You can always be more efficient. You can always have more ground to cover as a defender. You can always be better and more switchable. You can, like you said, abuse and mismatches. That's something he's talked about on our beloved player pods that he wants to be better at. And so these are all things he has to improve at, which will come with natural progression. I don't think the things he's being tasked with are as demanding as some of the things Dub is maybe being tasked with, which is why I would put him at 3 here. But he also does probably has to be this team's second best player in a perfect world, which would require some type of demand. I mean, that means he has to be probably one of the league's best defenders to make up for, whatever scoring might not be there. I don't know that he's just super dynamic scorer right now. Obviously, there's versatility there and how efficient of a shooter he can be among big men. He's not going to be asked to create a lot, though. I mean, you'll see a step there this year, which I find it more interesting than necessary for him. I think some of the Dub stuff to take that leap is necessary for the team. For Chet, at least in this coming year, maybe not, maybe in the long term it's absolutely necessary, but this coming year, I think it's just more fascinating to see what he can do as a potential, post hub or facilitator and inverted screens. Like it's more fascinating than necessary. That's why I got him at 3. But I agree.
Yeah, and with JW, you're looking at players historically have made a bigger jump year 2 to 3 than 1 to 2, and so he has that benefit going for JW as well. And then what you hit the nail on the head on with Chet is that it just feels like all he's got to do is act naturally, like Buck Owens. I mean, like he just has to be his natural self, and he's going to improve on all these things. It's not going to be some revelatory play from him that you're demanding from him. Whereas with JW, like you're demanding from him to become a playmaker and become a ball handler and passer and be better in the pick and roll, finding Chet Holmgren, for example. Like this is a guy who did not get the benefit that Lively got, where Lively was just spoon-fed easy buckets upon easy buckets. Chet, of course, had a little bit of that, but not nearly to the degree of playing with Kyrie and Luka. Shea and J-Dub have to get a little better at that, of finding him earlier in the pick and roll. And that's stuff that will make Chet look extremely improved, but is actually really tied to other players, like leaning on other players to do so. So I think that that's what puts him just below J-Dub on this list of most to gain, most to prove this season. Number 4. This is where I think that the list can get spicy, because this is a tough list to put together of a team that has a lot of answers already. I have Cason Wallace, number 4. Who is your number 4?
Not even close. And this is I feel really weird about this one, but I have Kenrich.
Okay. Yeah, we're not even close on Kenrich and Cason. Like
mine is personal though. I imagine yours is more team structure.
Yeah, that's for sure. I have Kenrich not even in the top 9 of my list.
Oof. Well, I think the thing with me for Kenrich is that personally, like he's not in the same boat as Ooze, but like the necessity for him is like waning. Like I don't know. I mean, the Kenrich, the flashes they saw from Kenrich to center 2 years ago were not the ones they saw last year. And I don't know with Hartenstein in the fold now how necessary Kenrich to center is. I mean, he's probably 4th string center now. If you want to have him as a wing defender, where does he rank as a wing defender on this team? Like, I mean, he's an aged guy, so in terms of things to prove, he kind of is who he is. But like, where's the room for him is kind of what I was shooting for here when I put him higher up on the list. Like, Is there something he can prove to show that he belongs on his team as something more than a morale guy, like an actual rotational guy? Because I think morale guy, I think guys respect him. I think that's not a question. I think he's valued. I think he was in guys' ear. I think he was in Dub's ear through the playoffs, especially. So as far as morale goes, locker room presence, he's necessary in that. But like rotational, like is he gonna continue to be as useful as he once was? Like where's the room for that?
Yeah, I think with Kenrich, what bumps him lower on my list is one, last year he did have a dip in production and in his role, but we do forget that like this is a guy who almost immediately out of training camp had a back injury, and those things linger almost every single time. So like how much of that was the back? How much of that was just a loss and a regression point for him as a guy who, despite being relatively young, I mean, he's like 30 years old, but he's got a lot of tread on the tires. As a guy who plays that small ball five and gets banged up a little bit in doing so, I still think that the Thunder are going to want to play small sometimes, and so like they're going to have that dimension and that wrinkle, but they won't have to lean on it as much as they've had to lean on it in the past. So finding that balance and that tuning will be interesting. It's just, I think, when you look at this team that's already so confident in waiving 2 roster spots as of right now, because you look at it, as we mentioned at the top of the show, they literally don't have 1 roster spot, filled up, and they also have 1 occupied by a guy who cannot step on the floor this year. So they're clearly content with the guys that they have right now available to them to deploy, and they're also content with Kenrich Williams just being a guy who is a locker room culture setter, and as Mark described him, a guy who, if you're not doing the right thing, is going to pick you up by your shirt collar and line you out. And so, like, every team needs that. Every team that's been successful has a guy like that maybe doesn't play as much. Maybe a casual fan asks, "What is he doing there? Wouldn't you rather have a G League guy who's averaging 5 points and shoots 50% from 3, and maybe he can give you a spark?" Like, no, you'd rather have a guy who's integral to what you're trying to do culture-wise. So I just don't really have that same intrigue with Kenrich anymore. But it's a really tough thing to jumble up with this list, and that's why we mentioned that you can go a variety of ways. For Kaysen, it is more what he could unlock for the team. Of like if he does prove that he can tap back into his point guard background and fill that role in the secondary unit. This is a team that like we look at right now and think is like perfect. There's no perfect team ever in basketball, but one thing that you still wonder about is last year they were desperately needing a table setter next to Shea and J-Dub to make life easier for those guys. And Josh Giddey was not that. And like I think that people look at his usage number and look at his basketball reference page and think he wasn't. Like he was not able to be that table setter. And then that was a hole that they have not filled this offseason. Now they can try to fill it in the aggregate of like you've got a heck of a playmaker in Isaiah Hartenstein down low who can be a playmaking hub for you. I think Caruso is a better playmaker than most give him credit for, who can help you there. And so if you patchwork Caruso and Kaysen and then Stagger, Shea, and J-Dub, like you've figured out a way to blanket it all. But if Kaysen can just step up in that way, which is an area that the Thunder, like Kaysen in apparently, because we've heard Mark talk about it even before the end of last year, he talked about how they're excited for what that looks like this summer because they understood they couldn't shuffle Kaysen down to the blue the way they could for other players to get those valuable reps and to get that opportunity. Well, he's had a whole summer of that opportunity working on that. And he's somebody that Sam's even highlighted whenever they made the trade of Giddey, him and Chet, of guys who can step up with the ball in their hands. So if he's able to accomplish that, it takes this team to the next level. A counterpoint to me having him this high would be if he's just simply what he was last year. That's still great for this team. So at this point, we're splitting hairs on who should be where because this team is so concrete. But he has an ability to prove himself and unlock a whole new dimension where these other guys, I don't know if they have that same gear.
So should I mention where I had Kaysen now, or should we just continue on with the list?
Mention where you have Kaysen now, and let's get your Kaysen thoughts. You have my Kenrich thoughts. We've now crossed 2 guys off.
So I had Kaysen. Let me count here. 1, 2, 3. I'm bad at math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had Kaysen 8th, and it was kind of along the lines of your counterpoint. Obviously, there's some dependence from the Thunder based on the summer they had on him. Like you said, they talked about him among that core of guys who they're going to lean into as facilitators. I don't know that I've ever been super like some fans that are projecting like based on those ideas. of what Kaysen could be as a facilitator. I think they're a little optimistic. I think as a secondary creator, if that's the ceiling, I think that's still going to take time. But because he's like a attack closeout guy right now, like drive and kick, like perfect for the system. Like you said, they're going to patchwork guys, and that's why theoretically I think so many people are so high on him because the patchwork idea makes sense. I mean, they draft and they assemble teams based on who can fit in the drive and kick, pass, shoot, do the bare minimum of that, which the bare minimum in the system is pretty useful. It's pretty practical. Um, I just always think Kaysen is going to be more practical in that sense than he is this grand facilitator. And so I think, like kind of like you said, if he's exactly who he was last year, with just like a hint of natural second year progression, I think he'll be more than fine, and that's why I have him as eighth. I don't know that he really doesn't have much to lose unless I think the asterisk we got to kind of put on all these guys is that if any of them happen to have like a fluke of a shooting season last season, because all these guys had the sliders up last season. If any of them has a drop off, we're looking at them as a different player potentially for a year or whatever. Were they really a good shooter last year? Kaysen is in that unique boat of people that he doesn't have a large sample size as an NBA shooter, so you could be looking at him like, was last year a fluke, whatever. But I think if he has a similar year to last year, this team is probably still where it's supposed to be. Now, I think in a perfect world, his ceiling is like a dub-led lineup. He's like a capable second ball handler. It's wishful thinking, but I think it's what they're aiming for. I mean, I'm thinking of a lineup like Dub running the offense, Kaysen taking on more facilitating responsibilities. He's like a decent secondary guy, but they're leaning more on probably iHeart as center. You got Isaiah Joe moving off 1,000 screens, and then the four or whoever probably doesn't matter. You could throw like Aaron Wiggins or something in there. But that's the idea I have of what Kaysen Wallace should be this year. So I don't know that he has a lot to lose or gain. I just got him like almost in the middle, like eighth is like further toward the end. But
coming up, who is the rest of the list? We'll discuss it on today's show. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Gametime, check out the Gametime app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase by downloading the Gametime app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply whenever you create your account. I love Gametime. You can get some super sweet deals, last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. But also, when you look at these great features, I think, number one, it is the best place to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, but I love their all-in pricing. I love the fact that you don't have to worry about fees at the end. It's all right there, all-in pricing. And I love the view from your seat. That way you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, especially whenever you're going to a venue that you've never been before or haven't been that often, to where you don't know the exact sight lines and what the proper vantage point is for what you're looking for. Check it out today at Gametime. Go there right now and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball with Joel Lorenzi, beat writer at the Oklahoman. I'm Rylan Stiles, beat writer at Thunder on Sports Illustrated. Joel, we've gotten through only 4 names right now. We need to speed this up a little bit. My number 5 is Lu Dort.
He's mine.
Okay. I mean, I think that the Lu Dort case is simple, but I'll let you make it.
I think for Lou, with the addition of Caruso, if this window is really a few years, whatever we're looking at, if there's a trade to be made, whatever, there's a bunch of variables to consider. But like the thing for Lou this year is, the question is he really expendable? Like, how expendable is he really with, Caruso now in the fold, with Kaysen obviously in the fold, with so many guys that can do some similar things, and among them, Lou stands out as a guy who in the past has had some questionable shot selection. I don't know that he's completely gotten rid of that. He's become a better decision maker. He's taking strides for sure. It's not questionable, but some of those decisions are still there. So like, he is still a spicy trade piece. And so if you're looking at a 2-year window, is Caruso the guy you're leaning toward keeping if you have to decide between those guys? What do you think Kaysen is? Like how expendable is he really is what I'm asking with Lou.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to look at that in terms of, whenever you're trying to. So if we can agree that this roster, despite looking that way at this moment, isn't perfect, because I don't think there's ever a perfect roster.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to make a trade, it's hard to do it with only draft picks. You're going to need a sweetener. You're going to need somebody to throw into the pot, and also somebody to match money, frankly.
Yeah.
And so Dort can do a little bit of all of that. So that's one way to look at it. My vantage point of looking at it too was just you now have other closing options in the sense of offensive efficiency. Like, I think that Caruso and Dort, of course, on the basketball index defensive meter yesterday that came out, they're 1 and 2 in perimeter defense. Like, if the defense is on par with each other, which we know it is, and one guy is clearly superior offensively, and you still need to find room to close with Shea, Dub, and Chet, that leaves you 2 spots. You close with Caruso, and what if you need more offense this game in a tight down the stretch type of event? Now you're no longer closing with Dort if he's not up to snuff on the offensive end, which isn't a devastating thing. But if he proves through the course of this regular season that when you take off Josh Giddey from the floor and whenever you have a more conjointed offense, that he too can up his efficiency and up his overall production, then that opens up an avenue for him to prove himself more. If he still is devastatingly bad at the rim, which he has been his whole career, then you have a totally different conversation. And for the first time in his career, the pressure's on him to maybe not be in the closing lineups. And that's something that I don't think that people are thinking about right now, because you just close your eyes and think of the hard-nosed hunkering down defense that he, Kaysen, Caruso, Chet can provide and suffocate teams. But offense matters too, especially in the modern NBA. And so how he handles himself as an offensive player and as an efficient player will be key. And that's why I have him in my top 5.
Yeah, and it's tough because if you want to talk continuity for a team that doesn't have a lot, he's one of the people who were here before all this. I mean, before the black eye talks, we're talking bubble. Like it's him and Shea. And so that's just something to consider when thinking about what this team might look like from year to year over the next 3 years. And just how much he's grown as a player too. It's interesting because obviously he is younger than Caruso, but as far as comparison side by side, Caruso does a lot better than him right now. Like as if you want another pick and roll ball handler, like Lou Dort was not involved in a lot of pick and rolls as a ball handler, not as much as Caruso was last year. And so these are just the things to consider. Who'd you have at 6?
At number 6 for my list, I have Isaiah Hartenstein.
I did too. Come on, Rylan, you got to stop copying off my notes.
Okay, we're rolling now. For Hartenstein, I just think you give this guy stability, both financially, both with a singular organization, and stability in the sense of, from all the talk that we've heard so far, from Sam on down, these guys believe in him, and they believe in the fact that he's only 26 years old. They believe that he can still progress as a player. They believe in him just both with the financial backing and how they envision him unlocking this team. So what does that belief and confidence do to a player? What does that do for him? Can he really shoot? I think that part, sort of the way that you feel about Kaysen's playmaking, I feel that way about Hartenstein's 3-point shooting. I don't think that needs to be a thing that really happens. Sure, he can have a fun 14-30 season, but I think that's getting a little overblown over our skis with his 3-point production. But what if it's not overblown? What if that's real? And so, like, there's just so much up in the air. Does he play with Chet? Does he start? Does he come off the bench? That I think that he has a lot to prove this season.
Yeah, I think for me, the room to prove is like, kind of like you said, the belief in what he can unlock. How much can he actually unlock? Is his post playmaking gonna mean that much to that second unit? Like, is he gonna be that vital a part to that second unit? We know how important he's gonna be as a second rim protector because Chet's legs can only do so much. I mean, they ran that dude into the ground last year. I mean, I shouldn't say he ran himself into the ground last year. And so we know he's going to be needed there. We know what he can do as a DHO guy. We know what he can do as a screener. He's this team's best screener on day one. I don't got to see him play. But I don't know, man. Like obviously you probably at some point had to not be married to the idea of having a straight rotation of stretches and good productive stretches, because all the possible productive stretches are either in Boston or their name is Victor Wembanyama outside of OKC, right? And so at least the ones that are worthy of a championship contender, which is what people are talking about in OKC these days. But, like, can this thing work where, you take such a drastic step in a different direction with the DHO, the spacing that can come with that, how the guys kind of orbit around him, like what that looks like. I don't think it's among the top priorities. It doesn't. I mean, I maybe some of my thinking is because I think it will work. Like the floor seems pretty high on this, but I guess we're just questioning the ceiling now is what it is. That's why he's kind of like smack dab in the middle. Not super crazy expectations. I mean, the money comes with expectations, but also not like he's not at the top of this list. Not like Dub or Chet.
Yeah, I think that with that, you hit the last note of we know how this works. We're part of the machine. We know how the machine is going to be. When you're paying a dude $83 million a year, he's under a microscope. I don't care what he's been for his career. I don't care the role that you're expecting him to play. I don't care how justified it was. And you and I, we're intelligent enough. We are plugged in enough to know that is money well spent. That was use or lose it money. That was a unique opportunity, a unique luxury for this team to pay him that money. And that there is no chance in the world that the Thunder regret doing that. There is zero chance of regret. He could go out there and be terrible, frankly, and they wouldn't regret it because of the unique position that they were in. That doesn't stop how national folks talk about this team, how national folks talk about that contract. And so this is a guy who's going to have to handle that pressure, and he can do it. And I think that it's going to be fine. And I think he's going to be awesome for the Thunder. But like that's a part of it too, of like proving why, sure, you can say that they quote unquote overpaid by X million dollars for a backup center, but they got the very best backup center. I truly believe that in the NBA, like the best backup center. And it's money well spent if you're Oklahoma City. I have number 7. I have Alex Caruso number 7.
Hold on, let me check my notes.
Count them up.
I have Caruso lower. I have Dylan Jones actually.
I have Dylan Jones at number 9. Why do you have Dylan Jones higher than Caruso?
Because I do think there's so much for an organization that lives and dies by experimentation. I mean, this is a Doc Brown, Steve Rogers organization. Like Dylan Jones is an experiment. Like this is the experiment. Maybe some of your problems with Oos are, absolved with what Dylan Jones can be. Who knows? We don't know what Dylan Jones could be. We know positionally he rebounds well. His handle is good enough, and he was enough of an offensive engine in college that he'll probably go through some ball handling and pick and rolls, stuff like that. But like, how ready will he be? Because there's a rookie curve, and then there's a curve for whatever type of player he is. I mean, he's like, I don't know. He's like a point guard with Larry Johnson's body or something. Like it's a very interesting thing. So I think if he hits, it could be a very interesting curveball for them. He could probably be a real rotation player. I think this is more about personal game. Me putting him here, it's less about team structure. If he doesn't hit, I don't know that they're losing sleep, especially not this year, because I don't know that that's a this year thing. But it's more about proving himself and proving this mold, the translation of his mold to the league and what that could look like for such a unique role and a unique team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Dylan Jones, he's just a hard guy to pencil in, and it's sort of similar to last year at this time. No one really believed that Kaysen would go wire to wire as an important rotational piece for the Thunder because they experiment so much, because they value the blue so much, because that they do all these things, that there was a large amount of people who thought, yeah, he'd come in and be serviceable, but you'd also send him to the blue and let him experiment with his style of play. But he made himself indispensable from the word go. And not to say that Dylan will do the same thing, but he certainly has a chance to. And the Thunder aren't going to limit him from the opportunity to do that. Will he see that opportunity flourish and actually, realize it the way that Kaysen did? Who knows? So he is interesting. It's also interesting just to see how you play him. Like you said, is he a guard? Is he a forward? Is he a combination of both? Is he a big man? Like, what is he? for a team that likes to play small and likes to have wackiness. So I can see where Dillon is higher. I have Caruso higher only because I think that he's more important to the team, and I don't think that that's a hot take. And I think that if he can prove that he can eat up these playmaking minutes that you need him to soak up whenever you don't have Shea out there, and whenever you have Dub out there but want to make life easier on Dub because he's not, invincible and needs some help. If he can do that, then it alleviates a lot of that worry. It alleviates a lot of the missing pieces. Because right now, if you had to nail me down on what the Thunder should do at the deadline, I would say go get a table setter. But if Caruso comes in and fills that role, then he's proven himself and he's helped the team out in a big way. Also, I think he's going to be the slobber, Joel, and we know how important the slobs are for a great ATO coach. But that's my number 7. My number 8 is Jay Will.
I had Jay Will. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I hate that I had to count. I had him 9, actually. I had him above Caruso. I had Jay Will, then Caruso.
Okay, so I had Caruso, Jay Will, and then Dillon Jones. So we're the same kind of batch.
Yeah, sure. For me, with Jay Will, it was more about NBA teams, like their center rotations are usually like a few guys deep. Jay Will's obviously not at the top of the list. This is probably the line I think I should have had with Kenrich. But I think with Jay Will, like he could easily just go to another team. I'm not saying Kenrich can't, but I think the market for Jay Will might be, more expansive. Who's to say? I just think he's younger. That's probably what factors in. But the thing is with Jay Will, like they're gonna probably use him, but not as much as they did last year. I mean, this guy was playing the minutes that iHeart's gonna play this year. He was playing that in that playoff series, which is not gonna. It's not going to, and probably shouldn't be the case this year. Just because like as much of it helps to have that other shoot. Like let's say iHeart that the shot doesn't pan out, like you're kind of talking about. Jay Will is that other theoretical stretch 5. I don't know. Obviously, there's questions of consistency there, but he does hit the 3 ball. He hit some 3 balls in that series, that Dallas series, and so it's notable. But his minutes should go down. I think he's not dead last on this list because there's some things he has to prove in terms of what he will be in those few minutes. What kind of defender he'll be if he's going to try to lean into shot blocking again, like he did for that stretch last year. If he's going to try to make taking charges sustainable again, like what is that going to look like? Is his he wasn't the most efficient 3-point shooter on the team last year, but was his percentages last year a fluke? Will they go down because he'll play less? Like there's just variables to consider that don't make him dead last on this list. Like he's somewhere square, like closer to the middle than we would think. But also it's Jay Will. He's like the 3rd rotational center now, so he's not going to be at the top of this list either.
So yeah, I think that with Jay Will, what makes him for me, just real quickly, is I'm not going to try to reiterate every point you made. It's as simple as everything's more comfortable for him, and with this one, since we're getting down to the lowerness and the lesserness of the list, I'm taking this from prove himself to changing his perception, and the perception of Jay Will from going from your backup mainstay after Chet to your 3rd string, who is not just your 3rd string center, but now can play next to Hartenstein. Now can play next to Chet. He played next to Chet for 2% of his minutes last year, and that's when I personally thought he looked his best because he's a power forward and a small ball center. And so now he's, less demanding of a role, but a role he can actually flourish in. And so like the perception of who he is from a fan base that really scrutinized him in year 2, despite him getting better. Like I think that's what gets lost in this. Yes, the games were more high stakes. Yes, the Thunder lost those minutes whenever he was on the floor after Chet came out in the Dallas series. He, as an individual, was a better basketball player last year, which is what you're looking for. That now eye test of him being a better basketball player and the stats I think will catch up together, and it will change how people evaluate him and think about him. So I have him at 8, Jones at 9. We've talked about him. We've talked Kenrich at 10, and you've already had Kenrich there. So my 11, I think that this will be your 10. Will be Wiggins for me at 11.
I have to count this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10. I had Wiggins at 11. Caruso was my 10. You
Okay.
pretty much hit the head on Caruso. I think if he is who he is, they'll be fine. I mean,
Yep.
I don't think they need him to be much more. Wiggins is close to the bottom just because I think the only thing he might have to prove is whether last year's efficiency was a fluke. I mean, he didn't shoot enough 3-point attempts to qualify, but he would have easily been the league's most efficient 3-point shooter. I think he shot like 45% from three, which is insane. I mean, all these dudes shot crazy from three. But Wiggins' role is really, it's hard to mess up. I mean, he's a great cutter, shoots when he needs to. He's that spot scorer in pretty sound ways. He could have played more last year. I mean, you can chalk that up to experimentation or whatever the case may be. He could have played and probably should have played more last year. And so I don't know that he has much to prove. His contract, I mean, is viewed as a bargain league wide. So I just don't know that he has a lot to prove.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That he doesn't have a lot to prove, and that's why he's so low. The reason I have him above Joe and above Shea is that with Joe, he feels like he is what he is at this point. Like he's just an excellent 3-point shooter who's a scrappy defender. With Wiggins, he's gotten the long-term security now. With that security should come a minutes investment too. Because you remember at the beginning of the season how we were still looking around like, man, wish Wiggins would have played more, which is not on Wiggins. It's, he doesn't control when he plays. But with a more stable, minute log, he'll take a step up in public perception, I believe. And so, like, that's part of proving yourself is what everyone thinks of you. And so I think that he'll be able to raise his stock more than a Joe can, more than a Shea can. For me, Isaiah Joe is above Shea just because Shea is Shea. But I think that there's nothing left for Joe to prove because I just think that this is just Isaiah Joe.
Yeah, Isaiah Joe is now. I mean, he can have stretches where he's streaky. I think that's any shooter. But you look at the numbers. By now, he's one of the best movement shooters and shooters period in the league. That's all this team really needs him to be. I think they asked a lot of him to kind of be that fifth starter at the end of the playoffs. That was because Giddey was what he was. They didn't have anything to kind of supplement that. And kind of make that switcheroo last minute because they had played Giddey in that role all year long. But Isaiah Joe, if he is who he is, like, what else is there to prove? I think what made people love Isaiah Joe even more last year was that he was an improved and more active defender. He's flying for rebounds that he probably shouldn't be getting. Like, he's doing things that you don't even really need from him. But it's fun to see from a guy that's already a great movement shooter. So nothing to prove for Isaiah Joe. And then Shea, I mean, what can we say? Shea is the most consistent player on earth. Had one of the best postseason runs last year. Was, as far as we know, based on one postseason run, this team's first option, a very capable first option for a championship team, a championship caliber first option. There's no Becky Hammond ain't questioning that, I don't think. And so that's why he's at the bottom of my list.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, Shea. We're going to wax poetically about Shea the whole season, so I'm going to just let what you said stand. Joel, thanks for joining us. I already hear the bosses yelling at me. I'm so sorry for the long pod again. This is what happens whenever me and Joel get together. But Joel,
do you want to make it longer? Do you want to tell the people?
You've read my mind. We're too in sync today, Joel. Do we have an announcement for the people who are listening at the 50-minute mark?
You tell them. You're better at that than I am.
Joel, I'm proud to say that you are the first announcement of a few that will be coming before the start of the season of a new addition to Lockdown Thunder. Joel Lorenzi, the busiest man on the beat who's flying coast to coast with different obligations in every city. Joel Lorenzi will be on Lockdown Thunder once a week, ladies and gentlemen. We're really excited about it. This has been a lot of fun. We've started it. We've soft launched it in the offseason. But from here on out, once a week in the regular season. Another announcement is starting Monday, we're back 5 days a week from now to the next August. So, I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun to get rocking and rolling. But Joel, once a week, man.
I'm honored. I've been waiting all my life for a pod. So such a worthy pod, such a worthy host. Like I'm just honored. What can I say?
I'm glad that you're going to join us once a week. And obviously, like, the goal will be once a week. Again, Joel's on the road trips. He's traveling. There might be a weeks shuffled here and there, but once a week, Joel Lorenzi. It's been a lot of fun in the offseason. We'll do it again next week. We already have a topic for next week lined out. And then pretty soon it'll be media day. It'll be training camp. It'll be this season. So Joel, thanks for joining us. Go follow him on Twitter at JXLorenzi. Check out the Oklahoman. And until next time, be good and be good.